Today I'm going to share some summer tiered tray ideas that will instantly elevate your space and give it that perfect touch of style. Welcome to the Chic Show. Today's playlist is hosted by DIY with Aria and Lowly D's Creations. For this project, I'll be using all 6 of these blocks from Dollar Tree, as well as these colors in Waverly chalk paint. I painted each block a different color. Once they were all painted, I used the IOD letterpress stamps to stamp on letters. I'm stamping on the word blooms, but we're going to use some flowers for the O's. Now, what I didn't realize was I was 1 block short here at first, so I do fix that in just a minute. Once they are all dry, I go ahead and use my finger sander just to sand around the rounded parts of each of the blocks. For the O's, I'm using some of these paper roses from the wedding section at Hobby Lobby. I'm just using hot glue to glue those onto the front of the blocks, and this is when I realized I was missing a letter. So I need an M. So I mixed together some white Waverly chalk paint with some purple acrylic paint and came up with this beautiful lavender, and then stamped my M. To make these raw edges stand out a little bit, I used some Waverly antique wax and stained around the edges. What I really should have done was stain the blocks to begin with, and then when I sanded back, you would have been able to see that darker color. This is a little wooden chicken that I thrifted. It's just a little ornament or something. I did fill in that hole, and now I'm giving it a coat of DIY paint in sandy blonde. I knew what I wanted this project to look like in its completed state, but getting there I was a little confused on how I was going to fill in this background. So I chose to use some different stamps that I had on hand. I think these are IOD stamps, just various ones. I'm trying to fill in the chicken. In the end, it really doesn't show anyway, but it made me feel better at the beginning. So I just stamped some of these onto the front of the rooster and his tail. I'm also going to be using scrap pieces of IOD transfers that I had on hand. I always keep all my scraps because you never know when you might need one, and this was the perfect project for those tiny scraps. I'm just starting with some small flowers and stems, and I'm going to be rubbing those transfers onto the chicken, and then I will fill in the gaps. I started with smaller rub-on transfers because I knew I wanted to end with a large one. So I'm just filling in as much as I can. The main flower that I wanted to use is from the Fairy Tale Floral rub-on transfers. And so now I'm going to add this one, and this is when I'll decide that that lighter color paint was not really what I needed. So I'm going to add this other flower, and then I'm going to go back and just touch up those painted areas with a different color. Now DIY paint does dry lighter than it is when you actually paint while it's wet or when you seal it. So it might have been okay, but I went back with this fusion paint. I don't remember the color, but I really liked this darker color better anyway. So I just filled in those gaps. It was no trouble at all, and I didn't even get any on my transfers. I used some Waverly antique wax mixed with a little bit of water to stain the edges. This is a wood block that I got in the Target dollar spot on clearance at some point, and I pulled that A off. I'll be adding the chicken, but first I'm going to stain the front of the wood block with Waverly Antique Wax mixed with water. Once that has dried, I'm adding on some of this fusion paint in lichen just to the front of the block, and I'm just kind of dry brushing it on. I decided I wanted to darken up those edges instead of just having that antique wax showing. So I went and dry brushed around with black paint, and it really was too much. So then I went back with the green paint and went over it and then sanded it once it was dry. Add a little hot glue or wood glue, and this project is complete. Several of these St. Patrick's Day blocks last year on clearance at Hobby Lobby. I've sanded off the glitter, and I'm adding some Mod Podge. I'm also using this vintage piece of sheet music, and I'm kind of deciding where I want it placed, and I want it to be straight, so I'm placing it down, face down like this, and then I'm going to let that dry and cut away the excess paper. With my finger sander, I'm going to sand away the edges just to make sure that they are nice and finished. This is another flower from the Fairy Tale Florals from IOD Rub-On Transfers, and I'm going to be adding this to the center of this block. Since the edges were green, I just left them as is. The only thing I did next was with my ink pad, I went around the edges just to give it a little bit of definition. Quick and simple, but adds a big punch. I hope you've enjoyed these summer tiered tray ideas. I would love to know which one is your favorite down in the comments below. Thanks again to our hosts for hosting today. Be sure and find their channels and the playlist in the description box below. If you want to watch another video, I suggest this one right here. Thanks so much for watching. Remember to share the chic. Bye now.